Nigeria's federal government announcement last week that was increasing the tariff on electricity, thereby allowing power distribution companies to raise prices to 225 naira per kilowatt hour from the previous rate of 68 naira, has triggered an outcry from the vast majority of Nigerians who have described the 230.8% hike as inhumane, insensitive, and anti-people. According to findings, Nigeria's electricity consumption per capita is already among the lowest in the world, with about 92 million Nigerians lacking access to power in spite of years and billions of dollars of investment in the power sector by various government administrations. Historically, since the return to democratic rule in Nigeria, electricity supply has always been erratic and unreliable. The recent hike is seen by many Nigerians as a suffocating measure designed to cripple the poor and the downtrodden at a time when government policies and reforms are supposed to uplift the poor. Joining us now is Prince Adetunji Adeyeye, energy lawyer from Generation Companies, and Mr. Babatunde Osadare, Chief Legal and Regulatory Officer, Ikeja Electric. Good morning and welcome to the morning show. Representative from the Discos and one from the Gencos. It's great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good morning. First, let's deal with the big elephant in the room. The received opinion out there is that this whole idea of increasing tariffs is a scam. It's deceptive. Persons have said, look, the band A that the Electricity Regulatory Commission is talking about, that nobody gets electricity for 20 hours. And the people who are falling under that band A have complained that there's no such thing as 20 hours of electricity supply. And they do not believe that the NERC has the capacity or the mechanism to monitor and sanction the discos when they default. Secondly, the subsidy money, 2.2929 trillion naira, that government says it will save and then put into health, infrastructure, and education. Many Nigerians say they are skeptical. They don't believe it. So, you are the Chief Regulatory Officer in Ikeja Disco. Yes. Mr. Osadare, you are Mr. Osadare. Yes. Mr. Adeyeye is an energy lawyer from Gencos. Okay, please, gentlemen, can you reassure us that this is not just a scam and that government means business? We are paying fuel subsidy. Now they say they are taking away electricity subsidy. So what is the guarantee that this will result into any progress? Let's start with you, Mr. Adeyeye. You are from the Gencos end. And then after you, we talk to Mr. Osadare, who is with us here, right here in Lagos. Prince Adeyeye.
So, Abati.
Good morning.
Yes, Dr. Abati, thank you. Good morning, Nigerians. Okay, to answer your question, I will be bold to say that the action of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory to remove subsidy for 15% of the electricity consumer in Nigeria is bold, decisive, and intentional, and is the right step for us to have efficiency in our power sector. Because you see, the problem of the power sector is basically two things. One, the inadequate infrastructure backbone, and secondly, the right pricing. So it's not that we don't have the capacity to produce adequate or sufficient amount of electricity that we need in this country. It's just that the price had not been right to drive the investment that will give us this power. So NEC, by actually gradually starting a process or a journey of writing the price and removing subsidy from some group of electricity consumer, I say is the right thing, and it would be what would lead us ultimately to sufficient power as envisioned in the Nigerian Power Policy document of 2001.
Yeah, but I wanted you to respond to concerns about the capacity of the NERC to monitor and ensure compliance and ensure that, after all, Abuja Disco, within 24 hours, 48 hours after this new regime was rolled out, was sanctioned for not following the guidelines. So that is the question. It's not about the theory.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Indeed. I think before the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission came out with its new tariff regime, they've actually tested the process at the back end for a period of time. So they've been evaluating DISCO's performance along the data of the feeders that the DISCOs submit regularly, and they've been able to really see that they are in a vantage position to both monitor the DISCOs who are the operators as well as the consumer end of it to make sure that there is total alignment in that new service tariff that they've introduced. So, and to also buttress your point or your question, you alluded to the action, that's the regulatory sanction and penalty that it was issued to Abuja Disco to pay over 200 million naira for failure to meet consumer expectation in this issue. So I would say NEC is not only there to check the data, but also to make sure that performance is given and is driven by both operators and that the consumer enjoys the benefit of service that they're being paid for. So I think this NEC that we have currently is really primed and they're well positioned to apply both the carrot and the stick when necessary to operators to make sure that Nigerian citizens get the benefit of the service they pay for in the electricity industry.
Well, Mr. Osadare, I mean, one of the challenges is that the DISCOs are technically insolvent. Yes. And the vice chairman of NERC, Dr. Hussaini, when he was on this program, was saying, well, one of the problems that this new regime will solve will be the problem of illiquidity. Okay? So I need you to speak to all of this and to say, will this necessarily translate into better performance, considering the fact that we still have the challenge of metering?
Yes.
Less than 80% of the over 12 million subscribers, of electricity service are metered. So where is transparency? Where would that accountability come from?
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. I think I'm going to start with the concerns and the doubts being expressed by Nigerians, and that's rightly so. Because of the trust issues we've had in the past around the reliability of power supply in Nigeria. So if we want to start afresh by laying the foundation for a sustainable power industry today, it's okay for there to be doubts around whether we are serious this time around. But like you mentioned, there is a liquidity problem in the sector. It's not just on the DISCO end. The GENCO, everyone, if you talk to the DISCOs, they are also being owed a lot of money. The gas suppliers are being owed a lot of money. Why? Because of that liquidity issues. And without liquidity, you cannot invest as much as you should within the sector. You cannot even attract private investment. The industry is one that requires a lot of capital, like we know. For us to have power, it is a market. And if you do not have the right foundation, the right ecosystem to lay that foundation to attract investment, then we would not have electricity. It's a very simple thing. If you look at all the facets of what is required along the value chain, you require a lot of money. Now, if the liquidity within the sector itself is not sufficient to cover the cost and also guarantee investors that, yes, if they come into the sector, they can make their money back with reasonable returns as provided for by law, then we will not attract that investment. The same issue is on metering. Metering over the years has been also a major problem, but we've made a lot of progress in the last 5 years, significant progress with all of the initiatives around NMMP Phase 0, Phase 1 ongoing, the MAP, and all of these initiatives that have been put in place to support metering. So we can say a lot of progress have been made in the last few years, but we must look at the foundation, decide where we want to get to, with the power sector. Like we know, it is a major foundation if we must start to build that future of sound economy for Nigeria. Power infrastructure is very key, and it costs a lot of money. The question is, who pays for it? Is it the government that should continue to carry that subsidy burden, or is it the consumers? Now, the question may then be, consumers are saying, no, I don't have the power, why should I pay for it? And the investors are saying, operators are saying, if I don't have the money, how can I invest? Where will I get the money from? The banks will not lend you money if you do not have a bankable project. So that is the issue, and that is what even led to the service-based tariff that we now have put in place in the year 2020. It was a catch-22 situation. Which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you pay the right tariff first, or do you make the investment first? It is a market. And if you don't have the fundamental principles around how a market should run, just like any other industry, you are not going anywhere.
All right, let me start with you, Mr. Osadare, because I told you earlier on. I mean, first of all, if you can tell our viewers how many of your customers enjoy 20-hour power supply. I know Dr. Batia asked that, but I want you, since you play in that space. Then the second thing I'd like to ask you as well is this, what the FCCPC have said, the Federal Consumer and Competition Protection Commission,
Yes.
saying that meters ought to be, homes ought to be metered to avoid a big challenge that has been identified with this hike in tariff being arbitrary charges based on estimated billings.
Yes.
I'd like to know to what extent or how much work is being done in that area. They've suggested a 60-day window for that to be done.
Yes.
Is that achievable? Because a number of people are going to complain that you're going to use this. Some people might use this as an avenue to just exploit customers. Then for Prince Adeyeye, thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that has been identified is that it's not the fact that people are paying a lot more now, it's that they are paying for darkness. And we've identified some challenges in being able to even generate electricity power, one of which we look at the gas supply and the other things. What's the assurance that this will change, that this will improve? We also talk about grid collapses, fires here and there, excuses. So the big deal is that Nigerians are said to be paying for darkness. What is the justification? I understand the importance for investment in infrastructure, but why can't you sort that out in terms of sourcing funds through investment rather than targeting customers in initial sense? Always a chicken and egg situation in this regard. But I'll start with you, Mr. Osadare, and I'll come to you, Prince Adeyeye in Abuja.
All right, thank you very much, Ayo. I think the question of 20 hours did not even start today. As far back as 2019, Ikeja Electric started this initiative of ensuring that if the pricing is right, the service will be made available. And that's why the engagement with the Magodo Resident Association, Ikeja GRA Association started. And it worked. Because at the time, the agreement was, let the company do the necessary investment, strengthen the lines, replace the transformers, meter the customers, and you will get the service. And with the partnership with the Transmission Company of Nigeria, that service was delivered. And in 2020, it became the sector-wide model for a service-based tariff, which is essentially, let's meet halfway, right? Do the investment and charge the tariff so you can recover the investment you've made. And to be honest, since then, if you ask customers who were on bilateral arrangements, whether or not they've been getting the service, to a large extent, they would say yes, they've been getting the service. Of course, there are exceptions.
What percentage of people would you say have gotten the service?
So, I'm giving an example now with customers who had bilateral arrangements. So, empirical evidence, Magodo GRA, Ikeja GRA, they enjoy that service. That's a classical example of customers who you can see, even before now, enjoy this sort of service availability. Now, fast forward to last week, where we have new tariff regime implemented, and customers have been put into classes Band A to Band E. And Band A, of course, you will now provide minimum of 20 hours for them and ensure you meet that service while they pay the tariff of 225. If you look at what the regulator has done, and I must salute the regulator for the courage, by ensuring over the last few weeks. I mean, a lot of us got to know about Band A and the new tariff mostly last week, a lot of people, but for some of us who are in the industry, it did not start last week. It's been an ongoing conversation and engagement since the beginning of the year.
Mr. Osadare, so because of our time, right, I'd like you to just answer the two questions, because, I mean, this is your industry.
Yes.
What's the percentage of people, your customers, who enjoy 20-hour power supply, especially just even let's look at Band A, because there's a complaint around that, and then very quickly, metering. Are you able to meet the 60-day window?
So, you're right. Now, if you look at it's publicly available information, go to the website of the discos and you can check their performance over the last few days on Band A service. For Ikeja Electric, it's been about 98% of the Band A customers. Empirical evidence, you can go and check. And I think if you check Eko Disco, Abuja Disco, they're also doing their utmost best to provide the service to Band A customers 20 hours, and it is being monitored. Now, regulators also put in place mechanisms to measure, because all the feeders, Band A feeders, have now been metered with smart meters. The regulator can actually spool data to see when those feeders are on and when they are off, and if you are not delivering the service, then you are sanctioned. And the regulator has made it very clear, if you are not performing, you'll be sanctioned. Now, around metering, I agree that ever than before, customers ought to be metered, especially now that you have customers on Band A who are paying this tariff. They have to be metered. And I think that's also a charge, a mandate that we all have to ensure that steps are taken as a matter of urgency to close the metering gap for Band A customers.
So do you have a timeline from your organization? FCCPC has said 60 days. Are you able to meet that?
So 60 days, yes, working with all stakeholders, it is doable. But everyone needs to come on the drawing board. I mean, we all know the issues around metering, the cost of metering, and even the initiative around funding that will be used to assess metering. It is doable, but we must all work together for it to happen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Prince Adeyeye, the question around challenges facing power supply. Nigerians say they are paying for darkness.
All right, okay, thank you, Ayo. Indeed, the challenges we have in the power sector also dovetail to generation. And in generation, we have quite a bit number of challenges. So if you look at our generation of fuel sources, it's basically hydro and gas. So gas is the major bulk of our source of power in Nigeria. And when you come to gas, so for instance, I'm a gas generator, for example. So if you come to generators that are generating with gas, you have unavailability of gas, the price of gas itself, the transportation of gas, gas constraint delivery, and all of that. But in spite of all these challenges, I would say that there has been sufficient initiative on the side of government and also some investors that are playing this space, despite the problem. But the solution really, it's a solution that will be a marathon solution, not a sprint. So if you look at, for instance, let's even take gas, for instance, which is the major fuel stock for us to generate. The way our gas infrastructure is built in Nigeria, it wasn't even built to deliver gas for power. So it's those lack that are not there, or those inadequate infrastructure that are out there, that government is now trying to plug. And that's why generation has been gradual. So I see these challenges are something that we are trying to fix, and it's fixable, and we'll eventually get there, but it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Again, my dear brother Osadare talked to the cost of financing this thing. You know, it has to be paid for. They say that investment chase the money. If the investor can see a return on their investment, I mean, everybody will pour in the money. So really, this step that NEC has taken, it's essentially the step that will kind of bring all effort to begin to align to a better, efficient power sector in Nigeria. You will see volumetric increase in volume of energy being produced, because now that at least there is a view or an assurance that if I put the energy there on the grid, somebody is going to pay for it. What has happened before is, you know, all the illiquidity issues. So that, of course, discourage more investment into generation. But with this sort of right pricing, I think generation volume will actually go up, despite the really perennial challenges we have in the gas sector. That would be the way I would see it.
Well, gentlemen, apart from the challenge with Matron, the other big challenge that we face is the national grid, which is over-centralized. It keeps collapsing. What do you think can be done about that? Because Prince Adeyeye, even if the GenCos that you represent generate the energy, the transmission company of Nigeria does not have a strong grid to, transmit. Do you believe in the idea of a decentralized national grid, and what do we need to do? And for you, Prince, Mr. Osadare,
yes.
I mean, we've been told that the discos, even when the GenCos generate, the transmission company manages to evacuate, the discos say, well, we don't have enough absorptive capacity. So despite the fact that we have an installed capacity generally of 13,000, and we generate maybe about 4,300 or thereabouts, what even gets to the consumer at the end, it's nothing, because even the discos will say, no, we can't take this. Can you help us address some of these, and what is the guarantee that these same problems will not persist? Let's start with you, Prince Adeyeye.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abati. I think I totally agree with the submissions that you've made. Your analysis are perfectly right. But the solution is actually already in the market. So if you look at the model that we operate right now, what NEC has been able to do, NEC has introduced the bilateral market, which is willing buyer, willing seller. And in that market its own, it allows a seller of electricity, for instance, a generation company like I, to provide both evacuation infrastructure that will deliver the energy that I want to sell to a willing buyer who is ready and available to take my energy. So in that model, you can see that if that model is being now utilized by a lot of generation company, you will see a lot of load being taken away from the grid. And so, in actual fact, some entities really don't need to be on the grid. So if you look at other climes, you will see industrial zone being located close to a generation company. That's what we've not done in this country. But with this model, I can say I can look at the manufacturer zone in Nigeria and say, look, I will power you, I'll supply you electricity, I'll provide the infrastructure to you, and then you don't need to worry about grid. So that model already exists. So I think that's a solution right there. Then again, if you look at our market, what NEC has also done, they've created a franchising regulation, right? The franchising regulation also could create modular or maybe embedded type of generation and supply situation where you have a particular area that is ring fenced, and then you have the franchisee sourcing his power and then creating the infrastructure also to deliver to those target markets. So I think generally our models or our market is beginning to evolve and to realize the dynamics of our situation and create solution. So I just think that we just need to operationalize this. To answer your question on modular transmission, right? A lot of credits is there also, but again, to begin to do that would also not quickly give us the 24 power that we need. So as much as I think it's a good idea, I'm more reluctant to really endorse that. I would rather want the bilateral contracting to be more developed, expanded, and then let generation companies play in that space and begin to take care of demand of certain electricity consumer in the sector, especially the huge one.
Well, Mr. Osadare.
All right. I think just to expatiate a little bit further on what my friend Mr. Adeyeye has said, the legal regulatory framework is also be expanded via the Electricity Act. Number one, to unbundle the TCN that we have today into the transmission service provider and the system operations. And I think the regulator is actually actively working on that, which would bring in more efficiency in the functionality of TCN. On the other hand is the investment opportunity with private participants who can also bring in investment to strengthen the national grid, as the case may be. If we come down to the disco side around energy generated, wheeled, and then distributed by the discos, I think it's a major issue around alignment, real-time alignment of the energy that is generated for consumers. For example, if you're able to generate power and transmit the power to a location that is not a disco's load center, then it becomes an issue where the disco wants that energy to come to, say, Ikoyi or VI, where they have the customers to take it, but the energy is going elsewhere. So technically, you have that alignment issue that happens sometimes. It's not essentially a problem of load rejection all the time. But there are a whole lot of issues that need to happen with all the stakeholders working in alignment to ensure that electricity that is generated real time is actually consumed where it ought to be. So that's what I would say in that regard.
Right, we're almost out of time, so maybe I'll just give a minute each for this question. By the way, so, one of our viewers who is on Aromire Road says they are part of your maximum demand customers, gets only 2 hours of electricity on average in the day. So maybe to look into that area, because there's some people who are on band A and are not enjoying even up to 10 hours of electricity in a day. So to please help look into that. But finally, on AT&C losses, your aggregate technical and commercial losses, which is a big issue, especially in power sector, energy sector. How do you minimize that? Because even as a business, one of the things you've talked about is revenue, and the fact that you have liquidity challenges. How do you manage that? What's the profile of that, and how do you manage that?
So with the aggregate technical commercial collection losses, of course, that's how the discos are assessed around their performance, their efficiency. That's a very big issue. Very big elephants in the room, and it is all around investments. You need a lot of money to invest in your network, strengthen the network to ensure that the losses on the technical side, commercial side, even collection, and we're talking about metering, they are all very, very important. Everyone has a part to play. The disco must play its part, do the necessary investment to strengthen their network, provide metering for its customers, reduce collection losses, all of those put together would go a long way in ensuring that AT&C losses are brought down within prescribed minimum as permitted by the regulator. But you need that investment. Liquidity is very critical. It's not just for the discos. The generation company, even transmission company to strengthen transmission network, and the generation company as well, to do O&M on their turbines, to pay their service fees, to their contractors. A lot of things dependent. Gas companies are there. They rely on that same revenue that comes from the customers upstream for them to also invest more in expanding gas processing facilities and new fields. So it's a whole lot that, you see, everyone, and that's why it's a value chain. And everyone, one way or another, is affected.
Thank you so much for your time with us this morning, Mr. Babatunde Osadare, and of course, Prince Adetunji Adeyeye. At the end of the day, we want to have people pay for what they enjoy and what they consume. We want to have power, we want to have light. Thank you for your time today.